In professional sports, a franchise player is an athlete who is not simply the best player on their team, but one that the team can build their franchise around for the foreseeable future.
Welcome into another edition of Franchise Players. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson. You can catch us every Friday here in the Triad, 5 o'clock p.m. on a TGI Friday lineup on WWBG 1470 AM out in Guilford County. And then if you miss that, you can hear it at 6 p.m. on WTOB 980 AM, 96.7 FM in Forsyth County. Got a loaded show for you today. We're going to be talking to Steve Wiseman from the Durham Herald Sun. He's going to go over roster changes with the Duke basketball team. We've also got Darian Thomas, the new Bleav in Charlotte Hornets podcast host. He'll be here with us to talk about the Hornets. I don't know why, but they've won 3 straight. They've won 4 of their past 5 in a time of the year where you need to be losing, and they've bought in. So we'll talk to him as well. But before we do all that, a friend of the program from Barrett Sports Media, Demetri Ravanos on the line with us. What's going on, Demetri? How you doing, man?
Not a lot, man. You have some of the classiest bed music to open the show of any radio show I've done. And the other day, I do want to say, I recognize they've won 3 in a row, and it is not the best if you are in the worst for Wembanyama sweepstakes. Yeah. But I will tell you, a few weeks ago, I took my son down to a game against the Orlando Magic, another team that is in that same sweepstakes. And boy, did the Hornets hold up their end that night.
I need to get down there. We're actually broadcast partners with the Hornets here in the Triad. They actually run on WWBG, powered by Tobacco Road Sports Radio. And I haven't had a chance to use, we get like these sweet tickets, broadcast partner, and I need to use them before the season's over with. And I was thinking, well, I don't really want to use it on this because I think they're trying to lose, and they're not. They're literally not trying to lose.
Well, so, you know what you do in that situation is you judge when you're going based on, okay, do I think Giannis is playing that night? Do I think Luka's going to play that night?
Those are the blackout dates. They won't give us those dates.
Of course.
So I've tried. I'm like, oh, LA's in town. Let me go see LeBron. Nope, blackout date.
Yep.
Durant's in town. Nope, can't go to that one.
You got to convince yourself that the Detroit Pistons really are worth going to see.
So I wanted to bring Demetri on because you guys know he does a lot of podcasts, a lot of writing for Barrett Sports Media. But I know him primarily as one of the biggest Alabama fans on earth. And he will go to the ends of the earth to defend his Alabama Crimson Tide. And I decided to start this series over the next 4 weeks where I would bring in someone, a beat writer, a podcast host, someone attached to the 4 schools that have the 4 quarterbacks that are at the top of this draft as a Carolina Panthers segment. And I wanted to start off at the very top with Alabama's Bryce Young. Let's play Convince Me or Nah, because that's kind of where I am with these quarterbacks. So best quality of Bryce that you've seen during his stint at Alabama.
Pocket presence. I mean, it's insane that this kid just never gets rattled. And it's not even just the fact that he can move around in the pocket. It is that he knows, he just constantly carries himself as if he knows he is in the right place. And if he is getting rushed, he is just as likely to step forward and evade the rusher as he is to just duck or hang in there and deliver it at just the right time. Pocket presence like that, I cannot remember in college football.
It's real Pat Mahomes-ish, kind of, sort of. It's like watching a miniature version of Pat Mahomes kind of sometimes when I'm watching him on film, which is very enticing to me. What's the worst quality of Bryce Young that you've seen since his stint in Alabama?
I think the worst quality, actually, it's interesting because it ties into that pocket presence. And I don't know how much of this is Bryce versus how much of this was Bill O'Brien, the offensive coordinator last year. Bryce seems so determined to show you that he is not the stereotype of a mobile quarterback, that he is not what we used to think about with, every black quarterback that we have ever seen, right? That there are times that you are, as a fan, watching him and screaming, if you have not found someone yet, run! You are fast enough to make a play. And honestly, I don't know how much of that is Bryce's mindset versus how much that was kind of beat into him at Alabama.
That's That's a bit scary, actually.
Yeah, I
Considering
mean,
where
look,
he's going to.
and maybe that ties into the worst quality that everybody has pointed out, and it's the reason that I didn't, is size. Like, size is an issue. There's no doubt about that. Maybe those two things tie in together, but certainly for me, like, I have seen Russell Wilson, I have seen Drew Brees. I've even in the one season that it worked for Baker Mayfield, we have seen that the height thing is not always the issue that people make it out to be in the NFL. So for me, it is that decision making when it comes to using his athleticism that is way more frustrating than being so small.
Did his size ever bother you at Alabama? Because that's a question I've always wanted to ask Alabama fans. We've really focused on his size and so much. Not his height doesn't bother me so much. I saw a picture of Kyler Murray and Bryce Young standing side by side. I think it was a still frame from like a Heisman House Nissan commercial or whatever. And they're the same height, but Kyler Murray is much thicker than Bryce is. He's got a very slight frame. Did that ever really bother you as an Alabama fan watching the games, or do you forget that pretty quickly?
No, you forget it pretty quickly. There are I don't ever remember him taking a hit the way, and obviously everybody knows now in the NFL the hits that Tua Tagovailoa took, but at Alabama, you might recall there was that game against Mississippi State where his hip got knocked out of socket.
Yeah.
I never saw Bryce take a hit like that. He did miss the Texas A&M game this year and about half of the Arkansas game with an injury to his shoulder, but that wasn't so much about being small. That was about the way he fell on his shoulder when he got hurt. So no, I mean the slender frame I never really saw be a problem. The height, I only ever saw one time where there was an issue of he could not get the ball over his offensive line. But literally, that is one time in, 23 starts? Like, that's
two seasons worth, yeah.
Yeah.
So, that and that's the thing I noticed with Bryce, too, where, like, those guys like Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, they tended to have to kind of scramble left or right to kind of create passing lanes to kind of get around people. Bryce doesn't really do so much of that unless he's being pursued. He's like he stays in the pocket. He does a lot of real deep drops in the pocket. He's clearly he's been used to doing that for some time. And it seems like his money shot's in the middle of the field. It feels like that's where he goes.
Yeah, he does deep drops so that he can then step into right where he wants to be to make that throw. I would encourage anybody that is a big Panthers fan, or if you're just a film head, go watch the come from behind win against Auburn in the 21 season and the come from behind win against Texas last season. There is a lot of that, kind of what you're talking about, Des, that not scramble, but scramble to get to the place he needs to be to make the throw he needs to make. Like, that is, I think, what is most impressive about Bryce's just general awareness of where he is on the field at all times. I think your point about the money shot for him being deep down the middle of the field, I think he's just a playmaker. I think it's easy to say that if you look at the 21 season because he had weapons like John Mechie and Jamison Williams. Last year, he didn't really have those weapons. And, I will come clean. I think Bill O'Brien is a terrible play caller. I mean, I don't think he ever really I think he was so interested in showing the world that he was better than a college offensive coordinator that he didn't do the things that could have created easy touchdowns. So I think that Bryce was a little bit hampered by the combination of the play calling and not having that game breaker at wide receiver last year. That doesn't mean he had a bad season by any stretch. Like, I think you could argue that last year he should have been a serious contender for a second Heisman. Not win it, but a serious contender.
Barrett Sport Media, Demetri Ravanos on the line with us here, franchise players here on WTOB 980 AM and WWBG 1470 AM. Does Bryce have the it factor? Because I was just talking to Skylar Callahan from Sports Illustrated and Jonathan Stewart, Panthers all-time leading rusher on the Bleav in Panther podcast, and we were talking about the it factor and how Bryce seems to be the one that's separated from these other four because he seems to have that thing you can't put your finger on. Can you remember? You don't have to remember a specific situation. I won't put you on the spot like that. But have there been times over the past 2 years where he's done something where you're just kind of like, I've never seen that before, or I didn't expect that to happen? Or
go look at his Heisman ceremony, man. Capri pants and no socks. Like, That's the epitome of cool. I think that the thing about him that is so interesting is he arrived on campus. And remember, I'm what's the best way to say this? I appreciate that Mac Jones was a good quarterback. I appreciate that he was a quarterback of one of Saban's best teams. But, it's not lost on me that it's easy to be an all-time great when you are throwing to literally the best receiver in college football history in Devontae Smith, right? Yeah. Bryce Young did not make that decision easy when he arrived on campus as a true freshman. He was like that kind of ready to go. So that's one thing I point to, is that guys just sort of respond to him. And the other thing, like the it factor, again, I go back to the come from behind win against Auburn in 21. Like, that was a matter of, for 3.5 quarters, nothing went right for Alabama. And then it was like Bryce Young just decided, oh, I get it, we're supposed to win this game. And he just did it himself, basically. To me, that is that, and the Texas game to a lesser extent. Obviously, Auburn being a arch rival makes it a little bit bigger. But that, to me, was the moment that was like, oh, God, I hate this term, but it's so true. This dude's built different.
I mean, and that's the thing that's standing out for me. Like, right, like as it stands right now, Friday, March the 31st, 2023, I have Bryce at number 1, but with reservations. A lot of it has to do with his size. And it's just, it's not fair, but it is what it is. Like, I mean, if you're taking the number 1 overall pick in the draft and you pick someone that's like the smallest quarterback ever that would be coming into the league, pretty much, your job security is riding on this. Like, I mean,
well, what are we saying? We're saying 5'10", 204, I think, are the official.
There's no way that kid is 204 pounds.
So I agree with you. I mean, like, I think you always have to. You got to remember, if you didn't get measured at the combine, pro day measurements are going to be like they're going to tend to line up with the media guide more than give you something true, right? But the other thing, and to your point about your job security is on the line here, I would think that, if you are the Panthers, whether it's GM, coach, whatever, Dave Tepper even, if you're looking at Bryce Young and you think this dude is the future, you've got to ask yourself, do we have the offensive line to get him there? Because, wait a minute, which one is older? Derek Carr is the one currently in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Okay. David Carr was a disaster, and I don't know if that was David Carr's fault as much as it was that the Texans were not equipped to deal with a rookie quarterback in there.
Oh, he got destroyed. Yeah.
He got murdered. Yeah.
And then he came to Carolina eventually, and we didn't have a line either.
Right.
So, like, it just continued.
Right. And see, that to me, like, I told you this before we jumped on air, and this is true. Like, I am so worried about Bryce going to the Carolina Panthers because, I don't want my sweet tiny boy to be killed. But also, the Panthers have a track record of not investing in their offensive line, or at least not properly developing their offensive line. I mean, Cam Newton had a MVP season, a legitimate, like, undeniable MVP season, and he gets to the Super Bowl and his left tackle is sliding across the field like he's on ice skates.
Byron Bell.
Yeah.
I completely erased him from my memory until this moment right now. I will say this: the new regime in Carolina has done an excellent job prioritizing the offensive line, everything else. All 5 starters that were there last year that vaulted Carolina into a top 10 unit, they were averaging like 160 yards on the ground, keeping the pocket clean. All of them are re-signed. Bradley Bozeman, to me, was probably one of the most important re-signings that they had, the center that they got from Baltimore the year before. So they're locked in for the next 2 years. So the offensive line actually is the least of my concerns, which makes me feel even, stranger with this love affair with Bryce Young, because I'm like, well, we have an offensive line. They signed Miles Sanders from Philly. He's got a running back. He's got an Adam Thielen and Hayden Hurst at tight end. They went out and got skill position players where you can pluck them in there. Real quick before I let you go, if you're the Carolina Panthers, do you take Bryce Young number 1 overall, and why or why not?
If you are confident in your offensive line, yes, because I think that we have seen small quarterbacks can work. I think in order for any rookie to work, I mean, think about, like, I look at a guy like Trevor Lawrence, right? Trevor Lawrence was plucked out of Clemson and dropped into probably the worst personnel situation in the NFL when you consider roster and coaches, right? But he was cool and confident enough to know he knew how to do the job. And as soon as he got professionals in there around him calling the plays, he was going to be successful and that team was going to the playoffs. That's what you're getting with Bryce Young. That's what you're getting with Bryce Young, with a guy that can hurt you a little bit more with his feet if you can convince him to use them. Maybe it's not such a bad thing that he doesn't want to run. Maybe you just have to make him a little bit more, or you have to make him willing to be a little bit more instinctual with that decision making. But yeah, I absolutely am going Bryce Young if I feel good about my O-line.
Good stuff. Good stuff from Barrett Sports Media's Demetri Ravanos. Demetri, tell them where they can find you on social media. You got your handle right there at Demetri Ravanos, so it's not that hard to find you.
Right. Yeah, at Demetri Ravanos is my handle on Twitter, but at BarrettSportsMedia.com. Just click on my face. It's right there on the side of the page, and you can see everything I've written, and you'll get all my contact info there too.
Yeah, definitely go check them out. Definitely follow Barrett Sports Media. They are on top of their game with all the good stuff they're doing over there right now. Appreciate having you on today, Demetri.
Yes, thank you, Des.
Coming up, Steve Wiseman, beat writer for Duke for the Durham Herald Sun. He'll come in, give us a roster update on the Duke Blue Devil basketball team. You're listening to Franchise Players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.
Franchise players are often referred to as the face of the franchise.
Welcome back into Franchise Players here on WTOB 980 AM and, of course, on WWBG 1470 AM in the Triad every Friday afternoon, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and, of course, online at TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. Desmond Johnson here with you. And I felt like we spent the past couple of weeks really focusing on the University of North Carolina Tar Heels basketball roster and their turnover. There's a school 8 miles up the street in Durham that's going through a similar thing, but they're used to it. They do this pretty much every year. The Duke Blue Devils and their roster, and who better to bring in to speak about them than Duke beat writer Steve Wiseman from the Durham Herald Sun. What's going on, Steve?
Desmond, how you doing, man? The revolving door never quits spinning.
No, it doesn't. And it's even wilder nowadays because with the transfer portal, it's hard to keep up with who's in, who's out, who's going to the pros, who's going here, who's going there. So I wanted to get a quick update from you on everything. Let's start off at the beginning of the week. Monday, guard Tyrese Proctor announced he'll return for his sophomore year. What does his return mean for Coach Shire and the Duke roster for next year, in your opinion?
It really sets everything up quite nicely because they needed a point guard because the two guys they have coming in are more combo guards, 6'2" Jared McCain and 6'5" Caleb Foster. They're probably better, off the ball, frankly. So having Proctor, and originally he was supposed to be part of this class, right? Because he reclassified, came a year early. So that it all fits in. And now he's got all this experience, and he obviously was a much better player at the end of the year than he was at the start, which you'd expect from a freshman like him, a young guy. So it's really good. It's a really good thing for them. It kind of sets everything up as far as where they're going to go from here, building that starting five.
Yeah, we're used to really over the past 6-7 years of expecting at least 3 or 4 Duke kids to leave early after being there for a year. And it feels like this year, it felt like it during the year that some of these kids were going to end up staying another year instead of leaving as one and done. But we knew there were a couple that were going to end up going. On Wednesday, Dariq Whitehead announced that he'll leave for the NBA. Not much of a surprise. He was hurt for most of the season, but he shot over 42% from 3. 6'7" wings, got the size NBA scouts are looking for. I Bleav he was the number 2 prospect coming in out of this class. Talk us a little bit about that. It's the wise move to go for Dariq.
Yeah, it was the plan from the start for him and for Derek Lively, frankly. Was it coming in last summer, they were going to be one of them guys, unless something really dramatic happened, right? Or major injury, which neither one of them, had. So, Whitehead again, shown enough 3-point shooting this year. He could be a 3-and-D guy at the next level almost immediately. And he's got the potential to be even better. I mean, he's got the skill set that just, frankly didn't develop in college like Duke had hoped it would, because he had the fractured foot and he had the strained calf, and, he was sick one game and just really didn't work out very much. But I think he's a guy you'll see will do a lot more in the NBA than he was able to show at college.
Yeah, I was actually pretty impressed with Mitchell, especially with Whitehead as he got time to play. He seemed very comfortable shooting the 3. honestly, the only other player I can think of in the ACC this season that looked as comfortable shooting the three was probably the kid over at Wake Forest, Monsanto. Yeah,
Yeah,
they kind of look. They almost feel the same kind of type player, almost in terms of being able to get that shot off pretty quickly. We found out early Thursday morning that Mark Mitchell is staying, which might be a surprise to some, might not to others. Was it a surprise to you that Mitchell decided to come back for sophomore year?
No, it wasn't. I'd kind of gotten that vibe, in the last few days here leading up to that announcement. So, again, he's a guy that has NBA potential for sure. He's just not quite there yet. He's got some more seasoning, whatever you want to do. I guess he could go do it, be a second-round pick, or do it in the G League, but he decided to stick around, one more year at Duke, which, gives them, with Proctor, 2 starters coming back, two guys that started almost every game last year, and that's what you want. I mean, Shire said he wants to try to get a little bit older, and so this is really going to help them there. They do have 2 other 6'8" or 3 6'8" freshmen coming in, TJ Power, Mackenzie Mbako, and Sean Stewart, and so it will be a little crowded there, but that's okay. You can mix and match with 6'8" guys. You can find enough playing time for them. Guards is a little bit different, right? So, but you can get those guys in there and get them going.
Man, it's like the train just keeps on rolling. And honestly, I don't think there's been a hiccup at all. Maybe Duke's succession plan, which many people joked about as it was going on, might have been the right way to go, because it seems like it's been a pretty seamless exchange from Coach K to John Shire with the recruits in particular. Now, I know after this year, I know they're still recruiting, and I think Carolina has the #1 recruiting class in 24 as it stands today. But Duke bringing in this class for 23, it's really Shire's. Well, I guess it's Shire's second class, right? Because this year now would be his first class.
Correct. The guys that came in last year, they were all recruited knowing they weren't going to play for Coach K.
Right.
Filipowski, all those guys. So Whitehead, Lively. That was the beauty of how they did that. But right now, this class is the #2 class. The class of 23 is the #2 class nationally, and that's probably because Proctor, dropped out and became part of the 22 class. So They had the #1. So anyway, but yeah, they still have work to do in 24 and 25. But to this point, they've kind of done what they want to do. You've not seen the slippage in the program that could have happened after a legend leaves.
Yeah, and a lot of it too, because I think a lot of for me, looking at it, what Coach K's final 4 or 5 years, it felt like the strain of having to replace a roster every single year eventually just wore the man down. To me, I've always said 2019 was probably the peak of his recruiting prowess with the Zion class that came in with RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish. Mm-hmm. But Shire has been there the whole time, with this. He kind of the same role Hubert had, Carolina not lead recruiter. Well, yeah, I guess you could say lead recruiter, or one of the main faces of the recruiting team for Duke. I've been very impressed with how Duke has been able to adapt into this college basketball world that we have now so quickly, between Shire getting these top recruits, some of them actually staying, which is different from what they had before. So it doesn't really matter so much if you've got the #1 class in 24 or 25, if you've got a junior Tyrese Proctor, at guard, and, Mark Mitchell, and, these guys that are sticking around. What have you heard about Kyle Filipowski? Because out of all the Duke players this year, he was probably the one that impressed me the most from beginning of the year to the end of the year with his style of play. Yet I hadn't really heard what his plans are going forward.
He's still making that choice. He's got to get a lot of feedback, from the pro people, and get his grade. And I will not be surprised if he goes to the combine and goes through the process and then decides whether or not to come back. I've not been told that's his decision. He has not made a decision yet. That's just kind of the feeling I get, that maybe it would serve him well, but we'll see. I mean, he's a guy that didn't come in with these kind of aspirations, like I mentioned, Lively and Whitehead from the start. That was their deal. They looked like they were going straight through. And Filipowski had to kind of play his way into this. He wasn't considered that. I know when the scouts came in last summer, there was a lot of talk about, oh, he's terrible defensively. He's not, he's going to get exposed on the perimeter and all that kind of stuff. And some of those things are true. He's not as good a rim protector as Derek Lively is. And he shot 29% from 3. In the NBA, he's going to have to get that up in the 30s, right? And he's going to have to become a better at 7 foot. So he's got some work to do in his game. It would probably obviously behoove him to play another year at Duke, but there's no guarantee he will, because that's not how things go anymore, right? So we'll see. We'll see what he decides.
Here with Duke beat writer Steve Wiseman from the Durham Herald Sun here on Franchise Players. I noticed that it's been a concentrated effort by Duke, the school, when these announcements come out. It's not scattershot. It's not like the player making an announcement on his own. It feels like Duke is coordinating these, and it almost feels like they're coordinating it so that each announcement has its own room to breathe. Because like if you look at
it,
yeah, and that felt real coordinated to me with Shire putting out stuff on social media. I've always joked with my Duke friends that I've always felt like Duke has the best social media department in all of college basketball in terms of what they do, their promotion of the brand, the videos, the hype stuff, all the stuff that they put there to hype Duke as a brand. The social media department does very well. And Shire had a video already prepared for, I Bleav it was Tyrese on Monday. And then on Wednesday with Derek talking about him. And it's like a series of videos that he's putting out for these kids that are staying or going or whatnot. They have a general manager basically that handles NIL, so Shire didn't have to answer questions about it. How did Duke figure this out so quickly, do you Bleav?
Boy, they've been on it for a while. It's been not just this year, and it predates, Shire taking over. And under Coach K, Dave Bradley kind of runs the social media arm for Duke basketball, and they identified that. Gosh, I want to say back 2015, 2016. Back then,
I was going
right?
to say probably right around that national championship team. Forward. It was just like hardcore, the coolest social media videos. It felt like we're coming out of Duke, and I mean, it killed me. But
they've invested in it. They really they took positions and they have social media content creators, not just for basketball. They've done with other sports too, and football starting to do a lot of it now too. With when Elko came in, that was important to him, of course. But anyway, not to get too far off in the weeds about that. But yes, it's something that is a brand strategy from a long time ago, and it's just grown from there. And then you mentioned Rachel Baker coming in last summer. Previously worked for Nike, EYBL, has a lot of contacts in that area. And Duke was really the first school to bring in something like that and say, you're the general manager. Like your job is to kind of manage the business side of things. And while obviously the rules don't permit schools to, engage, hook guys up with deals, right? She can advise people when somebody approaches a kid about a deal, they can come to her and talk to her about it. And she has all this business background, whereas basketball coaches have basketball coaches, right? So they can deal with the basketball side. So I know Nina King, the athletic director at Duke, not long after Rachel was hired, I saw her and she said, I know I did the right thing because as soon as we put it out there, I started getting calls from colleagues like, wow, that was such a smart deal. We're going to do the same thing. So you can see schools follow them up from there.
Because we've saw multiple coaches this past season, from Jim Boeheim to Hubert Davis, all kind of complain a little bit about how NIL has kind of messed with the routine of some of these kids and the mentality of such, where, Vince Carter and Antoine Jameson on Vince's podcast earlier this week were talking about that Carolina team and how they just didn't. It almost felt like they were distracted for most of the year because of stuff like NIL. Like, I got to go shoot this commercial after a practice or things of that sort. Duke never really, I don't remember Shire ever even having to mention NIL like all year. It's just been straight basketball, X's and O's and things of that sort, which is exactly what you want your head coach talking about. And it's just amazing to me that that's happened. I would think too, the McDonald's All-American game was this past week, and it was flooded with incoming Duke recruits. Matter of fact, they dominated the skills competition. Jarrett McCain won the three-point contest. He had 19 of 25 three-pointers in the contest. And then five-star Sean Stewart won the dunk contest. Both of them on their way to Durham next season. Do you think that there's a moment in time in the future here where you've got too many of these guys staying? It's a weird question, like, because Duke has been kind of 4 guys go out, 5 guys come in, like literally, but you're still getting the 5 stars. But now you're in a situation where maybe some of those guys might have to sit and wait, where before when they came in, there was no one in front of them. I mean, is this a dynamic that's been, thought about yet? Because Duke hasn't really looked at that,
No, absolutely it is. And it's something that, again, John Shire has talked about. He wants to get older. He wants to get a little bit older because you see in March where that matters, right? I mean, usually, and there have been teams that, like the 2015 Duke team, you compile all this talent and they get it together and they win it, right? But for the most part, it hasn't always worked out. You've had some big winning teams, ACC championships and all that, but you haven't gone deep in March. And so John kind of sees that he wants to be a little bit older. And now with NIL, guys might want to stick around a little more and things like that. But yeah, there's a transition going on because 5-star guys come into play. They come into play 1 year and go to the NBA. That's once you get on that treadmill, it's hard to get off, right?
Yeah,
so there's going to be a little bit of tweaking with it. And we're starting to see it this year because, Filipowski and Jeremy Roach also, right? I mean, I'll talk about Roach particularly more than Flip with the backcourt with McCain and Caleb Foster, another 5-star guy coming in. Proctor's coming back. Is there room for Jeremy Roach? That's 4 guys in the backcourt. There probably isn't, right? I mean, let's face it.
Yeah.
John Shire would try to make it work, but it's kind of a scary thing to think about. So that could factor in. Jeremy hasn't made his choice. I'm told he's 50-50 on what he's going to do. I mean, obviously he's a guy you want to have, right? I mean, he's a veteran player, played in the Final Four team, was a strong player last year, but Foster and McCain came into play. And so it's going to be hard to push them aside.
It'll be interesting to see because I don't think that's an issue that Duke fans have prepared themselves for yet, because I think a lot of them have preconditioned themselves to learning a new roster every year for really the past decade, it feels like. And now it's kind of moving back to the mean, I guess, in terms of getting 5-star kids that are actually staying longer than 1 year and also still bringing in 5-star kids, which is probably the worst nightmare for college basketball, that if they can figure this out and get this where these kids stay 2 years instead of 1 year, and you can stack the roster like every year and go 10, 11 deep with just 5-star kids. That sounds insane, but they're on the verge of doing that right now with Coach Shire. So the future's bright in Durham. I think Shire had a pretty good first year, and they're looking to build on that going forward. Steve, appreciate you coming on, giving us an update on Duke basketball.
Desmond, always glad to be with you, man. Take care.
Coming up, Darian Thomas, the new Bleav and Charlotte Hornets host, will join me. What in the world has gotten into these Charlotte Hornets? They're 3-0 in their past 3 games and won 4 of their last 5. And plus, Mike Jordan might be selling majority stake of the team. We'll catch you up on all things Charlotte Hornets here in just a bit. Franchise players on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.
In professional sports, a franchise player is an athlete who is not simply the best player on their team, but one that the team can build their franchise around for the foreseeable future.
Welcome back to Franchise Players here on WWBG 1470 AM, part of your TGI Friday lineup, powered by TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. If you missed us here, you can hear it every Friday at 6 p.m. over in Forsyth County, the Winston-Salem area, on WTOB 980 AM and 96.7 FM. Desmond Johnson, I am your host in the house, covering all things pertinent to you here in the middle of North Carolina. Shout out to Demetri Ravanos that was just on with us to talk a little bit about Bryce Young. The Panthers trying to decide what they're going to do with the number 1 pick in the draft. Let's mosey over to the other side of the Queen City. Darian Thomas, the new host of the Bleav and Charlotte Hornets podcast, joining us here. Talk a little Hornets and NBA. What's going on, Darian? How you doing?
Everything's going good. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So I'm a bit confused as to what's going on with these Charlotte Hornets right now. The Hornets have won 3 straight. They've won 4 of their last 5 games. What has gotten into these Hornets? Like, what is happening? Like, why are the Hornets winning games all of a sudden?
Change. I really think it's the change of lineup. I think it's just sparking new energy. The young players are getting out there, able to show their game, showcasing what they've been, the talent they have that, they've been waiting all season. They haven't really been able to play much. So I think it's just change. I think it's, we've seen Gordon Hayward talk about it. We've seen Dennis Smith Jr. talk about it, how we have nothing to play for right now, but pride. That's essentially what they've all said they're playing for. And you can tell out there on the court. So,
yeah, it feels like they're really kind of emerging as something. And this is something I wanted at the beginning of the year. The younger guys are getting more run. And I wanted them to get that run. I mentioned it to other people before when they laugh at me when I say it, but I'm like, they kind of remind me in some aspects of like 2012 Golden State. Like back, remember when Steph was getting ankle injuries all the time. We didn't know he was going to turn into Steph Curry the way he is, today. But they had like a glut of like wings and guards. Monta Ellis was like the main guy, and he kind of reminds me of Terry Rozier, where it was just kind of like, okay, you got to move some things around to let this flourish. And it felt like they were like a player or two away from maybe having something special that they grew organically. So when they drafted Klay Thompson, Draymond Green comes in, then you built that 3. Right now, the Hornets seem to have a 2 with LaMelo Ball, who's out with an ankle injury, out for the season, and Mark Williams, their first-round pick from last year from Duke at center. They need one more guy. I'll get to that in a bit, because all this winning, it's not really affecting their chances of getting a very high draft pick. So we need to put that out there for Hornets fans that are worried that they are ineffectively not tanking properly. They didn't have to. They're basically locked in the 4th spot pretty much no matter what they do. They could win all 7, lose all 7, and probably still be in fourth worst record in the league. The Hornets, though, have had the best defensive rating in the league after the All-Star break. Are the players buying into Steve Clifford and what he preaches? Because he's known to run older vets, and he did that for 2/3 of the season, and now he's running the younger guns now. Do you feel like the team's starting to buy into what he's selling?
I do. I feel like they're hearing his message. I feel like it's one of those things where if you look back with James Borrego, a lot of people wanted to say they're not listening to him. And I feel like after hearing the same thing, probably from 2 different coaches, maybe it clicked. Like, hey, maybe we really should start playing, a little more effort on defense. Now, some of it's matchup based. Like, for example, Terry Rozier usually guards one of the better guards of the opposing team. Usually it's not LaMelo. Terry Rozier is 6'1", 6'2". He has no business guarding. I mean, I know they may be the same height, but he has no business guarding Steph Curry or Damian Lillard. He has no business doing that. So, of course, it makes the defense look a little worse. But I think the guys have finally bought in. I think having a center to kind of funnel, if someone get past you, to kind of have funnel into the paint, I think that helps us a lot as well. And then probably one of the people who made the biggest jump defensively is PJ. I know he just had the 43-point game last night, which that's something we knew he could do, but it's seldom, but we know it can happen. It wasn't a shock to anybody. It shouldn't have been, at least. But I think him defensively being as versatile as he is, I think that's also a piece that you have to look at it, because he's finally able to just play the 4 and not forced to play center minutes, which when you have guys wrong places based on matchup, that doesn't help the defense either, even if they wanted to play great defense. So I think having the pieces, buying into the coach finally, I think it's all just playing a part. Do I think this is sustainable? Maybe not number 1, but hopefully, 10 to 15, you would want them to be around somewhere there, because we know fully healthy offense-wise, this team is at least top 5 with everybody. So if you can get 10, 15 in defense this day and age, all we want as Hornets fans is to make the playoffs and then hopefully be somewhat competitive. With a 10 to 15 defense, 5 offense, that's the recipe for that. So
yeah,
we'll get what we want. It may not be championship worthy, but it's definitely for what fans want. We would get what we want.
Bleav and Charlotte Hornets host Darian Thomas joining us here on Franchise Players. LaMelo Ball said he plans to be ready for training camp after rehabbing his broken ankle. What would you say is the one thing Ball needs beside him to take his game to another level, meaning a player possibly in this draft? There's a couple of guys right at the very top. Of course, Victor Wembanyama would be nice. Scoot Henderson. Then you got guys like a Gigi Jackson out of South Carolina or Brandon Miller out of Alabama. Who do you think would be a good fit to put with him there? Now, this is all thinking Terry Rozier is not in the long-term plans of the Charlotte Hornets if it's going to be LaMelo. And I'm thinking in terms of that Golden State analogy I was saying earlier.
Right.
If they're going to build a backcourt like that with Ball at point, you've got a couple guys that can play shooting guard that are at the top of this draft. Who do you think would fit the best with LaMelo?
For guards, I mean, it's hard not to say Scoot. I know he's smaller, and we just talked about with Terry Rozier, how Terry Rozier is small. But one thing people don't know about Scoot is he has like a 6'9" wingspan, which I know he's 6'2", so I'm willing to take that 6'9" wingspan. Also, he puts a lot of pressure on the rim, which is something LaMelo has gotten better at this season, but he does struggle at times to finish at the rim, and a lot of players on the team do. So having Scoot to be someone that can attack the basket, I think is going to help the team. And then just having someone who can play in the flow of the offense. Terry Rozier is more of a ISO ball type player, and there's nothing wrong with that. You play how you play, but I think having someone like Scoot who he's not necessarily the shooter that Terry Rozier is, but I mean, the shot I think will come along. I mean, that's just how young players play. Usually their shot tendencies aren't the best, but I think Scoot will probably just be the best bet because he can be that defensive partner with LaMelo, and that's what we desperately need, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm cool with really any of those guys.
Yeah, it
would be fine. I'm intrigued with Brandon Miller with him. I think that could be an interesting thing there. And of course, if somehow they end up with the number 1 pick in this draft and they select Victor Wembanyama, I don't even know exactly what position he plays. I guess it's shooting guard, small forward, I guess, but he's like 7'4" or something, isn't he? So like, I don't know how that would play out. Almost like a new Twin Towers with him and Mark Williams, if you could somehow get him. But I don't think you can go wrong with anybody in that top. Once you get past the top 3 or 4, then the draft kind of thins into more like specialty type players to me, like a Derek Lively or something to that effect. So, the Hornets right now, they're in the 4th slot. And again, Hornets fans, if you're worried about all this winning affecting the draft position, it's really not. So in actuality, it's a perfect time for them to start trying to win a little bit, because it's not going to affect their draft stock at all, really. And it gets the young guys some reps and some experience on the court. Give me your thoughts on owner Michael Jordan potentially selling the majority stake in this team. How would you rate his time as an owner in the NBA, and should he sell? Should he sell the majority stake? Because we haven't really heard much since it first broke last week. Has maybe had a change of heart? Maybe they're waiting for after the draft because they'd be a little bit more valuable depending on where their draft pick is. Your overall thoughts on Jordan and potentially selling the majority stake?
It hurts when I say this because he is one of my favorite players of all time, which I'm pretty sure he's a lot of people's favorite, but he is not a good owner. I think he does a lot for the community. And I haven't seen much of like other owners just because I'm not in those spaces, but I can only speak for Michael Jordan. He does a lot outside of the basketball team, which you would always want someone as high profiled as him to be doing. So kudos there, because you're not going to get that from every owner. But as far as what he's produced on the basketball court, it's just not the best, considering, one, I think that he likes to, hire his friends a little too often, but then kind of still want them to defer to him. So it's like, if you're going to take the initiative to hire your friend, let them do what they do instead of kind of like stepping in. But I mean, he brought the name back. He's done great things. It's just he's also done not so great things. The Gordon Hayward money, that didn't make any sense at the time. Gordon Hayward on the court when healthy, worth it. But you knew he was injured. And at the time, we just drafted LaMelo. We were 3rd in that draft. Yep. So you already knew you were kind of taking a small reset. I didn't see the point of getting Gordon Hayward. I saw the point of getting a veteran for sure. Didn't see the point of getting an expensive veteran like that. So that was something that, concerned me. And then, I mean, we can go back to Lance Stevenson and the Cody Zeller, drafting Nova. So it's just all these decisions are not quite the best as far as what's on the court. So it hurts me to say, but I just don't think he's been that good of an owner. Not that I don't. And this thing is, I don't think it's out of his realm. I think he could. I think he just wants things a certain way, wants things Michael Jordan's way. And with a franchise or business in general, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to have people around you who know more than you do, and you let them do their job. Now, if they don't do their job, you handle that. But that's kind of the point. And I feel like he doesn't really allow that. And that just could be him personally. And that's him. But it's not good for an NBA franchise.
I think it's because it's basketball. If you've been told over and over and over, you're the GOAT, you're the greatest of all time in this sport, I'd imagine it's really hard to take the opinion of somebody when it comes to evaluating basketball talent. And it might be you're not good at evaluating talent, but it's going to be hard for you to believe you're not when everyone keeps telling you that you're the greatest of all time on the court. So I agree. Some of the things he's done ownership-wise, he's kind of ran it more as a business instead of an NBA franchise in terms of making money. They've never gone over the luxury tax penalty or whatnot. He's never done that, never brought in agents and had to pay extra for them. They've been kind of just spinning their wheels the entire 13 years he's been here as the majority owner. I think they've only made the playoffs twice while he's been the owner, and they were both first-round exits, I think, to the Heat, if I'm not mistaken, both times. So, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's just I think it might be time for a change. It might be time to have somebody come in and give a fresh perspective on what possibly needs to happen with the Hornets. But I can never call him a bad businessman. The man bought the majority stake for $180 million 13 years ago, and the Hornets are currently valued at $2.7 billion. So when he sells it, he's gonna make a pretty penny, and it's gonna look like a wise investment when and if he does. Maybe he's having second thoughts. We'll keep a track on that. Darian Thomas, the new host of Bleav and Bleav in Charlotte Hornets, on the line with us. Before I get you out of here, I'm gonna zoom out to the entire NBA. Right now, as it stands, Friday, March the 31st, 2023.
Okay.
Who is your matchup for the NBA Finals? And I'm saying this as I'm staring at the Western Conference, and like every team has the same record.
Yeah, the West is insane. The
I
West
don't
is
even know where to
crazy.
begin.
Oh man. For up until All-Star break, I was saying Warriors Celtics again because it's hard to count out the Warriors. That to be honest, that's what it just comes down to. It's like in football when Tom Brady's with the Patriots. There was teams way better than the Patriots at times, but the second you were like, "Oh, I'm picking the Steelers," Tom Brady goes on a run, and then so that's kind of how I feel with the Warriors. I've slightly changed it. I think it might be the Suns. It's
They can
just
stay on the floor together. That's the
problem. That's exactly what my problem is. Chris Paul also is part of my problem. Is sometimes he doesn't perform as well as you want him to in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's been in the playoffs so many times. It's easy to remember the bad ones over the good ones. But when you play that many games, it's you tend to have some bad games. I'm not putting that on him, but really the star would be Devin Booker. I know Kevin Durant, of course, but we know what Kevin Durant does. We to this point know what Chris Paul does. To me, it would be what does Devin Booker do? And we've seen him, in the past when they went against the Bucks, but can he reach that next level to kind of help this team because they don't have a bench. So it's up to those three guys. And Ayton could be an X factor as well.
The bench is in Brooklyn, pretty much. Like
right.
They're sent them all to Brooklyn.
Right. And so for the East, you would hope it's the 76ers time as good as Joel Embiid has been all year. I don't see it though. I just don't. And so I would have to probably go Bucks. A healthy Bucks team is dangerous. They were dangerous last year. And they didn't have Chris Middleton, who was a 20-point per game scorer.
Yeah.
I feel like their bench has gotten a little better to where, this season they didn't have to play everybody too much. None of the guys on the bench are going to probably play in a finals game, but it's enough to where you would hope that your main guys are rested and able to come back. That's why Chris Middleton, I think, was able to take so much time, is that their bench was just good enough to have him really take his time and not rush back. Drew Holiday, we know, is a performer. So I think Suns, Bucks. I mean, but I'm just wouldn't be surprised to go any other way. You got to think about the Nuggets. My only reason I didn't pick them is just because this is kind of their first taste of being expected to make it.
Yeah, the front.
And we all know that can be rough on a team. I don't care how good the players are. When you have that expectation of you're supposed to make it, it gets a little tougher.
I'm gonna go old school and pick Celtics Lakers in the NBA Finals.
Lakers is the team I wanted to mention. If they make it, it's all there. Like they have a chance. They have nothing.
Yeah. I saw them the other night. They look good. They look like they're having fun again, and that's scary for the rest of the Western Conference because the Nuggets might end up playing the Lakers. Round one. Right now the Lakers are the 8th seed. Still in that play-in tournament. They got to get to the 6th seed to get there, but they're only a game and a half back. That's the Warriors in 6th. The Timberwolves are in 7th. The Lakers play the Timberwolves, I think, tonight, so they can move up. They've moved up a slot every one win they've had the past 2 or 3 wins. So that's how tight it is from the 4th seed, the Suns, with 41 wins, down to the Mavericks with 37 wins on the outside looking in. Like, it's literally separated. There's like 6 teams, 7 teams separated by like 3 games. So there's no telling what's going to happen in the West. Got to get you out of here, though. Darren, tell them where they can find you and your content as the new host of Bleav in Charlotte Hornets.
You can find me anywhere you listen to podcasts for Bleav in Hornets. I also have my YouTube channel, Trust the Buzz, as well. So I talk Charlotte Hornets on there as often as possible. And I do draft stuff, which that's on my Twitter at TruzzBuzz, TruzzBuzz. And yeah, I mean, I'm always open to have a conversation about basketball, any sport, really. I'm a sports fanatic. So yeah, just feel free to reach out and join the community.
Yeah, we'll definitely bring you back. And of course, the Bleav in Charlotte Hornets podcast for Tobacco Road Sports radio listeners, it is available with us through the week. So just check our listings. You'll be able to hear Darren's new episodes in our new Hornets block. We'll have all Hornets Sports Illustrated podcasts on there as well. So definitely keep an eye out for that. We are out of time. We got to get out of here. Enjoy the weekend. Make sure you tune in to the Rundown live Saturday morning on WWBG 1470 AM at 11 a.m. Brandon Blakeney, Tobacco Roads basketball expert, will come on to talk Final Four. We've got Jim Zoki from the Panthers Radio Network. He'll be on to talk some Panther talk. And it's WrestleMania season. It's WrestleMania weekend. Got Michael Davis from Drop the Mic podcast and Tap Out and Touchdowns. Ryan Frick are taking over the entire second half hour of the show as we preview the entire WrestleMania card, talk about our favorite finishers. It's just be able to mark out pro wrestling style on the biggest holiday weekend of the year for pro wrestling fans. So I will see you Saturday morning. Appreciate everybody on today. Talk to you soon.